The unexpected encounter. Marina's heart was pounding in her chest as she adjusted her uniform for the umpteenth time. The smooth fabric was as impeccable as ever, and yet she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her stomach. It wasn't nerves, it was something else. The quiet hum of the jet's air conditioning mingled with the distant sound of the crew moving about the cabin, preparing for departure. Today wasn't just another flight, it was the beginning of something bigger for Marina. She could feel it in her bones. After years of serving as a junior attendant on commercial airlines, today marked her transition to the world of luxury aviation. The private jet she was now working on wasn't like the crowded, often chaotic flights she was used to. This was exclusive. This was refined. The clients? They weren't looking for a quick, in-and-out service. They demanded excellence, attention to detail, and, most of all, discretion. Marina had spent weeks preparing for this very day, training hard, learning the ropes of elite service, and most importantly, understanding the unspoken rules of luxury travel. She knew this would be her moment to prove that she belonged in this world. She had read up on high-profile passengers and even memorized the names of a few famous clients who frequently flew on jets like this. And today, she would be serving one of them. The jet was already filled with the smooth, luxurious tones of a soft piano playing over the speakers as the rest of the crew worked quietly behind the scenes. Marina moved quickly to check the seating arrangements once again. She made sure everything was spotless, even inspecting the gleaming overhead bins, making sure every latch was secure and every cushion was fluffed. Everything had to be perfect, even if no one was looking. She had heard rumors that the jet was carrying a very important passenger today, one whose identity was supposed to remain a mystery until they boarded. Marina's curiosity was piqued, but she also felt the familiar nerves that came with the uncertainty. Who could it be? What kind of person would need this level of service? The thought made her excited but equally unsettled. Her brief moment of introspection was interrupted when she heard the distinct sound of footsteps approaching the cabin. She straightened her posture and looked up, her gaze immediately falling upon the woman who had just appeared at the foot of the jet's stairs. The woman was tall, at least a head taller than Marina, and moved with an effortless grace. She rolled a sleek, designer suitcase behind her, its polished surface reflecting the soft light of the sun. She was wearing a tailored jacket that hugged her figure in all the right places, with silver bracelets that glinted in the light and a smile that was almost imperceptibly confident. She wasn't wearing any flashy makeup or overly dramatic accessories, but the woman still exuded an air of undeniable sophistication. Marina's mind quickly shifted into judgmental mode. She couldn't help it, it was a reflex. She had grown up in a world where people like this woman, rich, poised, and put together, were often regarded with a mixture of awe and resentment. She had been taught to see them as distant, unapproachable, and untouchable. The stories her parents and family members told about people in the upper echelons of society were ones of exclusion, privilege, and power. The woman's skin was a deep shade of warm cocoa, glowing under the afternoon sun. Her hair, soft and voluminous, framed her face beautifully, but Marina's gaze was drawn to her expression. There was no hint of arrogance, no smugness to be found. In fact, her smile was calm and composed, as if she were used to being admired and yet didn't feel the need to boast about it. Marina didn't want to admit it, but she felt threatened. There was something about the woman that unsettled her, something deeper than just her physical presence. It wasn't the woman's height or her apparent wealth that bothered Marina, but the quiet confidence she carried with her. It was a reminder that Marina, no matter how much she tried to control the narrative, was still a newcomer to this world. She still had something to prove. Taking a deep breath, Marina forced herself to act professional. She stepped forward to meet the woman at the bottom of the stairs, determined to maintain the composure she had worked so hard to develop. "Excuse me," Marina said with a sharpness that bordered on curt. "I'm the lead flight attendant. Let me check your ticket to make sure everything is in order." The woman's expression didn't change, and she didn't seem fazed by Marina's tone. Instead, she calmly handed over a small envelope containing the flight details. Marina barely glanced at it as she took it, skimming the contents without truly reading. She had a job to do, and this was just another passenger, nothing special. At least, that's what she told herself. "I'm fairly certain this is my flight," the woman said, her voice calm and steady, offering no hint of defensiveness. She didn't seem in a hurry to rush inside or make any demands. Marina wasn't ready to back down. She hadn't been given the luxury of simply letting things slide. "I'll need to check your baggage," she said, still holding on to her professional air, but with the edge of a challenge in her voice. The woman didn't argue. Instead, she silently rolled her suitcase up the stairs, every movement precise and deliberate. Marina followed her up, still feeling that strange sense of discomfort prickling at the back of her neck. She couldn't explain it. This woman, this seemingly ordinary passenger, had an air of mystery that Marina couldn't quite place. Once inside the cabin, Marina's thoughts raced. The luxury of the jet was palpable. Plush, leather seats stretched along both sides, and the gleaming accents reflected the meticulous care that had been put into the design of the space. Yet, Marina's eyes didn't linger on the beauty of the cabin. Instead, they were drawn to the woman, who had already taken a seat, settling herself with a quiet, unhurried confidence. Marina stepped back and scanned the cabin, noting the absence of the second pilot. Her heart skipped a beat. The pilot's seat was empty, and she knew he must be handling last-minute paperwork. The jet was supposed to be ready for takeoff, but something about the situation felt off. She had expected smooth sailing, but this wasn't going as planned. As she moved to the cockpit to confirm everything, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this woman than met the eye. She had assumed that the passengers aboard private jets were all the same, rich, entitled, perhaps a little demanding, but this woman was different. Marina couldn't put her finger on it, but she knew her intuition wasn't wrong. Before Marina could enter the cockpit, the woman's voice called out to her once more. "Do you mind if I ask you something?" The question was simple, but it carried a weight that made Marina pause. Marina turned, surprised. "Of course," she replied, not knowing what to expect. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else," the woman said, her voice low but firm. Marina frowned. "What do you mean?" The woman smiled, a knowing smile that hinted at some secret Marina wasn't yet privy to. "You'll see soon enough," she said softly, as if she already knew how this story would unfold. Marina's stomach tightened. Something was definitely off, but now wasn't the time to question it. The woman was on the jet, and her business was just beginning. As Marina moved toward the cockpit, her thoughts were clouded with confusion and a sense of dread she couldn't shake. This flight, this seemingly simple interaction, was the beginning of something far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. The moment of truth. As the door to the cockpit clicked shut behind Marina, she couldn't help but feel a surge of unease. The hum of the jet's engines was the only sound, and it seemed to be growing louder in her ears. She ran her fingers over the sleek buttons of the cockpit control panel, instinctively checking everything for the umpteenth time. But her mind was somewhere else entirely, on the woman who had just boarded. The woman's calm, unbothered demeanor was unsettling. Marina was used to the wealthy clients, the ones who were picky and demanding, but this woman, she wasn't anything like those others. Her quiet confidence, the way she carried herself with an air of knowing, was both magnetic and intimidating. It felt like she was playing some kind of game, and Marina was completely unaware of the rules. Marina's eyes shifted to the flight manifest on the console in front of her. The passenger list was typically the first thing she would check, but she'd already glanced over it. The name of the woman who had just boarded wasn't listed anywhere. She wasn't supposed to be on this flight, not according to any of the records. That thought lingered in her mind, but it was quickly pushed aside. After all, there were many reasons a passenger might not appear on a manifest, perhaps a last-minute booking or a special arrangement. It wasn't her place to question it. But that gnawing feeling in her gut only intensified as the minutes ticked by. Marina began to feel like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit, something she had never experienced in all her years of service. The jet was beautiful, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon sun, but it suddenly felt suffocating. She glanced toward the cockpit door once again, as if hoping the pilot might emerge to clear her head. But there was no sign of him. It was just Marina and the woman, alone together in the vast, luxury cabin. The woman had settled into her seat without a word, glancing out the window as if she were already lost in thought. She didn't seem to be the least bit bothered by the fact that she wasn't supposed to be there. In fact, she seemed oddly at ease, as though this was exactly where she belonged. The question Marina had been avoiding suddenly struck her like a bolt of lightning. Who is she really? Marina took a deep breath, shaking her head as if trying to dispel the fog in her mind. She needed to focus. The woman was just a passenger, someone she needed to serve with efficiency and professionalism. She wasn't supposed to be distracted by her. But as she walked back to the cabin, Marina couldn't resist the impulse to glance back at the woman. She was still gazing out the window, a faint smile playing at the corner of her lips. It was the kind of smile that suggested she knew something Marina didn't. Marina hated that feeling. She moved quickly to the galley area to prepare the usual beverages and snacks. Her hands moved with practiced ease, but her mind was elsewhere. This isn't normal, she thought. She glanced at the overhead compartment where the woman's suitcase had been placed so carelessly. That hadn't been like her at all. Normally, Marina would have taken great care to treat the luggage of her passengers with the utmost respect, but she had tossed the woman's suitcase into the overhead bin with a careless motion. There was something about the woman that made Marina act out of character, something that made her defensive, even unprofessional. As Marina worked, her thoughts kept wandering back to the woman, and the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. The woman wasn't the kind of person who would simply pay for a ticket and blend in with the crowd. She exuded something more, something that set her apart from everyone else Marina had encountered. But what? And why did she feel like there was something deeper beneath the surface? The sudden ping of the cabin's intercom system startled Marina from her thoughts. It was the pilot's voice. "Everything set for takeoff, Marina," he said in his usual calm, unbothered tone. "Please make sure all passengers are seated and ready for departure." She nodded to herself, a little too quickly. Of course, everything was set for takeoff. This was just another flight. And yet, it didn't feel like it. The weight of the moment seemed to hang in the air, heavy and ominous. Marina took a moment to collect herself. She knew she needed to push these distractions aside and focus on her job. But as she made her way back toward the cabin, she could feel a strange energy building between her and the woman. It was almost as if the woman had the power to draw attention to herself without even trying. Marina felt as if she were walking in the shadow of something she didn't understand. When she re-entered the cabin, the woman was still sitting in her seat, her posture regal and composed, as though she were a queen awaiting her subjects. She didn't look up at Marina as she approached. Instead, her gaze remained fixed on the view outside the window, as though she were lost in her own world. Marina stood for a moment, unsure of what to do next. It was then that the woman's voice broke the silence. "Are you going to stand there the entire time, or are you going to tell me who you really think I am?" she asked, her tone light but with an edge of challenge that made Marina's pulse quicken. Marina's throat went dry. The woman had spoken directly to her, but there was something about the way she did it. It wasn't a question of curiosity. It felt like a test. And Marina wasn't sure she was ready to face it. I don't understand," Marina said, unsure how to respond. "I don't know what you mean." The woman smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was knowing, cryptic, as if she could see through Marina's every thought. She tilted her head slightly toward Marina, her dark eyes glinting with something more than just curiosity. "You already know who I am," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You just don't realize it yet. Marina felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. What was she talking about? Who could this woman possibly be? Before Marina could respond, the cabin door suddenly opened, and the pilot stepped in. We're ready for takeoff, he said, his voice brisk and professional. He glanced between Marina and the woman, but his expression was unreadable. The moment of tension was broken, but Marina couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. There was a weight in the air now, something that hadn't been there before. The pilot turned to head back to the cockpit, but the woman's voice followed him, "You'll see soon enough." Marina froze, her stomach knotting. What was it about this woman that made everything feel so wrong? As the jet began its climb into the sky, Marina could feel the vibrations underfoot, the hum of the engines filling the cabin. But it wasn't the jet's ascent that made her heart race, it was the eerie calm of the woman, her cryptic words lingering in the air. The moment of truth was coming. And Marina had no idea how much her world was about to change. The unexpected revelation, rising action. As the jet soared higher into the sky, Marina tried to shake the unease that had settled in her stomach. The soft hum of the engines became a distant sound, one that should have been comforting, but instead only seemed to intensify the strange tension that hung between her and the woman. The jet's luxurious interior, with its plush seating and polished finishes, felt suddenly constricting, like a gilded cage. Marina's mind raced as she moved about the cabin, ensuring that everything was in order for the flight. The woman had settled into her seat, her posture as graceful and composed as ever. She gazed out the window, her eyes reflecting the distant horizon, as if she were seeing something that no one else could. Her silence was eerie, there was no sign of discomfort, no nervous fidgeting or the usual chit-chat that accompanied most passengers. It was as though the woman had transcended the ordinary, leaving Marina feeling uncomfortably ordinary in comparison. Marina's thoughts flickered back to the woman's cryptic words, "You already know who I am. You just don't realize it yet." What could that possibly mean? Marina had tried to dismiss it as a harmless statement, but deep down, she felt that it was more than just a passing remark. Something in her gut told her that there was more to this woman than met the eye, and that she had been missing something crucial all along. She moved toward the galley, her mind still preoccupied with the mystery of the passenger. Trying to distract herself, she began preparing the in-flight snacks, her hands moving mechanically. But the more she tried to focus on her tasks, the more the woman's presence gnawed at her. Every so often, Marina would glance back toward the cabin, her eyes lingering on the tall figure of the woman who seemed completely at ease. Her serene composure only made Marina feel more agitated. A few minutes passed before Marina could take it no longer. She had to know. She had to understand who this woman was and why she felt like a looming presence in her life. She walked toward the woman's seat, her steps hesitant but determined. The woman had not yet acknowledged her presence, and Marina couldn't help but wonder if she was waiting for Marina to make the first move. The closer Marina got, the more the weight of the moment seemed to press down on her. When she finally stood before the woman, she was unsure of what to say. The words she had rehearsed in her mind felt too simple, too forced. But the woman, she made Marina feel like she was speaking to someone who was well beyond her understanding. It was as if the woman existed in a different realm altogether. "Excuse me," Marina said, her voice a little softer than she intended. "Can you tell me who you are?" The woman didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned her gaze toward Marina, her eyes locking with hers. For a moment, the air seemed to crackle with something unspoken. Something ancient and unknowable. Marina felt her breath catch in her throat as the woman finally spoke. "I'm someone who's been in your life for a very long time," the woman said, her voice smooth but laden with an unfamiliar weight. "You just never realized it." Marina blinked, taken aback by the response. This wasn't what she had expected. What did she mean by that? How could someone like this woman have been in her life? They were strangers, nothing more than passing acquaintances in a world of fleeting interactions. She felt a cold chill run through her, the certainty of her own confusion settling in. "I don't understand," Marina said, her voice faltering slightly. "How could you have been in my life before?" The woman smiled, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was the kind of smile one gives when revealing a truth too difficult for the other person to grasp. "You'll understand soon enough," she said softly. Marina stood frozen, unsure of how to respond. There was something about the woman's words that felt like an unraveling thread, pulling her deeper into something she didn't fully comprehend. The world outside the jet seemed to blur, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, locked in a silent standoff, each of them with their own secrets, their own unspoken truths. The woman's voice broke the silence again. "Do you know the true meaning of luxury, Marina?" Marina didn't answer right away. She had heard the word luxury used countless times in her line of work. But there was something in the way the woman asked the question, as though she were asking something far deeper than material wealth. "The true meaning of luxury?" Marina echoed, her brow furrowing. "Isn't it about wealth, privilege, status?" The woman chuckled, but it wasn't a sound of humor, it was a sound of knowing. "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "Luxury is about freedom. Freedom to be yourself, freedom to live without the constraints that hold others down. But you wouldn't understand that yet." The word struck Marina like a sudden gust of wind. Freedom? What did this woman mean? She had been working in the world of luxury for years, serving the wealthiest clients and doing everything she could to fulfill their every need. But freedom? That was a concept she had never really thought about. She had always viewed luxury as something external, something others had, something she could serve, but never truly experience for herself. "Who are you?" Marina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time, Marina saw a glimpse of something different. There was no arrogance in her expression now, only a quiet sadness, as though she had seen things that Marina couldn't even begin to imagine. "I'm someone who's been given the gift of freedom," she said, her voice almost reverent. But it wasn't always that way. Marina's mind spun as she processed the woman's words. A gift of freedom? What did that even mean? And why was she telling Marina this now? It didn't make sense. Nothing about this situation made sense. Before Marina could respond, the woman stood from her seat with a fluid grace that made it seem like she was floating. She walked toward the window, looking out over the clouds below, her expression distant. "I know you're confused," she said, almost to herself. "But you will understand in time. All you need to know is that you're part of something much bigger than you realize." Marina stood motionless, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but something inside her told her to wait. This woman, this enigma, was leading her somewhere. But where? And why? The woman turned to face her one last time, her eyes filled with a mix of pity and understanding. "You're already in it, Marina. The moment you decided to question your place, you became part of something greater. You can't undo that now." And with that, she returned to her seat, leaving Marina standing in the middle of the cabin, utterly bewildered. The woman's words echoed in Marina's mind like a haunting refrain, each one wrapping around her thoughts like a chain. "You're part of something much bigger than you realize." Marina felt the weight of those words pressing down on her, and she realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The moment of connection. As the jet continued its steady ascent, the hum of the engines and the quiet murmurs of the crew seemed to fade into the background. The world outside the windows appeared to be suspended in time, with endless clouds stretching as far as the eye could see. Yet, inside the jet, something far more important was unfolding, a journey that had less to do with altitude and more with the complexities of human connection. Marina stood by the cabin, her mind spinning with the woman's cryptic words. She hadn't moved from her spot for what felt like an eternity. The woman's unsettling presence lingered in the air like a distant storm cloud, and Marina couldn't help but feel the pull of her enigmatic energy. She felt like a spectator, watching herself from afar, wondering how she could have become entangled in something so complicated. Marina's eyes flickered back to the woman, who sat gracefully in her seat, her expression serene and detached, almost as if the weight of the world had already been lifted from her shoulders. She no longer seemed like a mere passenger. No, this woman was something else, someone with a history, a purpose that Marina couldn't even begin to understand. There was a heaviness in the air now, one that Marina couldn't shake. Taking a deep breath, Marina finally made her way toward the woman, her feet moving of their own accord. This time, there was no hesitation, no resistance. She had to know more. There was no turning back now. The woman looked up as Marina approached, her eyes sharp yet kind, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. Her gaze didn't waver, and Marina felt a chill run down her spine. "You're still here," the woman said, her voice soft yet knowing. Marina swallowed, trying to find her voice. She had so many questions, so many things she needed to say, but the words felt trapped in her throat. What could she possibly ask that would make any sense? What was the point of it all? "Who are you?" Marina asked, her voice trembling slightly. She knew she had asked this question before, but it felt different now. There was a weight to it, a longing for truth that she hadn't even realized she had until this very moment. The woman smiled faintly, as if Marina's question was a puzzle piece that had finally clicked into place. "I told you before," she said gently. "You already know who I am. You just haven't recognized it yet." Marina's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand. How could I know you?" The woman's expression softened, and for the first time, Marina saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "You know me because I am a reflection of everything you've ever known. All the doubts, all the fears, and yes, also the strength. I am what you were always meant to become, but you've spent so long hiding from that truth." Marina felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting. The words felt like a revelation, like a door that had suddenly opened, revealing a truth so deep and profound that it was almost impossible to grasp. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what the woman was saying. The woman stood from her seat, her movements deliberate and graceful. She moved toward Marina, and for the first time, Marina noticed the way her eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. There was something ancient in her gaze, something beyond the ordinary world that Marina had always known. It was as if this woman had lived 1,000 lives, and yet, she was still here, standing before Marina as though waiting for her to wake up from some long, deep sleep. "You've spent so much time living in the shadows of others, Marina," the woman continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've given so much of yourself to please others, to make them happy, but you've neglected your own truth. You've ignored the strength that lies within you. The strength that has always been there, just beneath the surface." Marina's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of the woman's words pressing down on her. She had spent so much of her life trying to fit into a mold, trying to meet the expectations of others, to please the people around her. But somewhere along the way, she had lost herself. She had forgotten who she really was, forgotten what she was capable of. She had hidden behind the polished uniform, behind the smile that everyone expected, but deep down, she knew it wasn't enough. She wasn't enough. The thought was a painful one, but it was the truth. And somehow, hearing it spoken aloud by this woman made it all the more real. The woman reached out and placed a hand gently on Marina's shoulder, grounding her in the moment. "You've been carrying this burden for far too long," she said softly. "The weight of other people's expectations, the weight of your own self-doubt. It's time to let it go." For a moment, Marina stood there, paralyzed by the enormity of what the woman was saying. Let it go. How could she possibly let go of everything she had known? Everything she had worked for? All the sacrifices she had made to fit into the world that seemed to define her? But as the woman's words sank in, something shifted inside Marina. A crack formed in the wall she had built around herself, a wall made of fear, of shame, of self-doubt. And as that crack widened, she felt a rush of emotion that she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The floodgates opened, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Who are you?" Marina asked again, this time with a newfound sense of wonder and awe. "How do you know all of this about me?" The woman smiled, her expression tender. "I'm you, Marina. I'm the part of you that you've buried, the part that has always known your worth. The part that you've denied for so long." Marina's heart raced as she processed the woman's words. She's me. She's the part of me I've hidden. The realization hit her like a wave, washing over her in an instant. All the insecurities, the doubts, the fears, everything she had carried for so long, had been rooted in a lie. A lie that she wasn't enough. A lie that she had to change to fit into a world that wasn't meant for her. The woman's voice broke through her thoughts. "It's time to stop hiding, Marina. You have everything you need within you. You always have." Marina felt something stir deep within her, a spark of courage she hadn't known existed. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her past lifting off her shoulders, and a sense of clarity flooded her mind. She didn't need to be anyone else. She didn't need to conform. She didn't need the approval of anyone else to be whole. She had been whole all along. With a deep breath, Marina finally stepped into the light, letting go of the shadows that had haunted her for so long. She turned to face the woman, this reflection of herself, and smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Thank you," she whispered, the words carrying more meaning than she had ever imagined they could. "Thank you for showing me who I really am." The woman nodded, her smile gentle and knowing. "You've always known, Marina. Now it's time for the world to see it too." As the jet continued its steady course, Marina felt something shift within her, a sense of freedom, of liberation. The woman was no longer a mystery to her. She was the embodiment of everything Marina had been too afraid to embrace. And now, with that fear behind her, she was ready to step into the life that awaited her. The sky outside was clear, the clouds a brilliant white beneath the plain. And for the first time, Marina felt as though she were flying not just in the sky, but in her own life. She was free.